Hi, my name is Harry. I'm the founder and the trainer for TechTrain, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about meetings in Microsoft Teams. TechTrain is a free resource that I created after working over 10 years in the tech industry and always struggling to find free training resources for my customers. If you like today's video, as always, please subscribe to the YouTube channel or like this video if you're already subscribed, and also make sure to share the video with colleagues or friends that may also find the information useful. TechTrain also has a LinkedIn, so if you want to follow along for updates on LinkedIn, you can do that by going to the link on the screen. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So as I said, today's topic is going to be meetings in Microsoft Teams. And with meetings in Microsoft Teams, we're going to be looking at a couple of key areas. The first area is types of meetings. We're also going to look at advanced meeting creation, ways to join a meeting, meeting controls overview, which is just an overview of all of the different controls in the Teams meeting, and then we're going to wrap up. So this is going to be a deep dive into Microsoft Teams meetings, and we're really going to be going through a lot of different features. So make sure to pause or rewind or rewatch the video if you miss something or you just want to review one of the features when you start using Teams down the line. As with all of my training videos, I'll be using Mac OS, and just a reminder that most of the functions that I go through in my trainings are also available on Windows devices. The difference between Teams on Windows and Mac OS is very minimal. If there is ever anything that I can really make note of, I'll make sure to call it out. Also, another thing to just disclaim is that I'll be using the desktop version of the Teams application. There is the web version of Teams as well, and a mobile version, but the desktop application is the best experience. That being said, desktop and web also have a very similar experience. Desktop does have a couple of things that I'll be talking about today that are not available in the web. For example, meetings popping out into a separate window or being able to pop chat out into a separate window. So I'll call those out as well whenever they come up in the training. One last little feature disclaimer. So I am using a business license for Microsoft Teams, and the features that show up in a business license may not be the same features that are available in your version of Microsoft Teams, or some features may be disabled by your organization. So make sure to keep that in mind when you're looking at the features in this video. And if you see something in the video that you're not seeing in your environment, make sure to check with your IT department to see if it's something that can be enabled or not. And the last thing before we get started, prerequisites for this video, I just recommend that you have a basic understanding of Microsoft Teams and also that you have a basic understanding of the functionality of a computer. Nothing too technical today that we're going to be going into, but understanding the fundamentals of Microsoft Teams is going to put you in a good place for this video. If you don't know the fundamentals of Microsoft Teams yet, make sure to check out the Introduction to Microsoft Teams video available on the TechTrain YouTube. Okay, so we're going to get started with the first part of our training today, which is a review of the types of meetings that are available within Microsoft Teams. So there are several types of meetings that can be set up within Microsoft Teams, and all of them just have a slightly different functionality. While we're not going to dive into all of the different types today and how to set them up and how to actually run them, I will briefly talk about each of them and maybe what scenarios they'll be best used for. And we'll kind of talk about how to choose the right one for your situation as we wrap up this section. We'll be focusing on just regular meetings themselves, and there is also even a few ways to hold those meetings within Microsoft Teams. Just because I like disclaimers, I do want to say that some of the other meeting types that we'll go through in this section may not be available for you. Again, if you're in a government tenant or maybe your admins have disabled certain meeting types or only made them available for certain users. So if you don't see them, just like I said earlier, check with IT to see if it's something you can get or if it's just not available for you. So let's go ahead and start off just looking at Teams meetings and the ways that you can get those started. So here we are on our calendar within Microsoft Teams, and you can see there are already a lot of different meetings that are on my calendar, and all of these are really just standard meetings or blocks that have just been placed on the calendar to give me focus time or to, for example, block out my lunch. But if we want to look at the types of Teams meetings that are available, or just the meeting types available in Microsoft Teams in general, we can go up into the right-hand corner here, and we can look at the meetings option here in the top right. So if I click on the little drop down arrow next to new meeting, we'll see a list of the type of templates that are available in addition to just a standard scheduled Teams meeting. So we've got webinar, town hall, virtual appointment, and controlled content meeting. Now these are all types that you'd be using if you are trying to set up really specific scenarios for a meeting. For instance, a webinar is going to be an event that you are hosting that has a registration form, but still has interactivity between the hosts or the presenters and the attendees for a meeting. A town hall is going to be a little bit more restrictive. It's going to be focusing more on just broadcasting content to an audience. That audience will be able to interact with a Q&A, but there won't be a chat for them to use, and they won't be able to come off of mute or turn on their video. Virtual appointments are a really specific type of meeting that's used to interact with people outside of your organization. So a really good example of virtual appointments is like virtual doctor's appointments or virtual appointments with government officials, where the organization can really tailor a lobby for those external participants to come in. And the process for those external participants to join the session is really streamlined, so you don't have to worry about people having issues with joining the meeting. Controlled content meetings are just kind of a more restricted version of a Teams meeting. It gives the presenters the ability to really pick and choose what content the attendees are going to see in the meeting without, kind of seeing things they're not supposed to. So like I said a minute ago, the different types of meetings that are available within Microsoft Teams are pretty diverse, and to be honest, each of them requires its own video to be able to really go into details on how to set it up, why to use it, and then how to actually use it during a session. So I'm not going to be going through how to do each of those today. I'll be focusing specifically on a standard Teams meeting, which honestly will make up a bulk of your virtual meetings when using Microsoft Teams. So let's hop over and take a look at the different ways that you can start one of those meetings. Before we start talking about scheduled meetings in Microsoft Teams though, I first just want to showcase the way to set up quick impromptu meetings called a Meet Now within Microsoft Teams. And so if we look at our calendar here in the top right, we've got a button for Meet Now. And what this is going to do is it's going to let us set up a quick impromptu meeting so that I can pull some of my colleagues into this meeting and we could have a quick discussion. Now, this is just for those scenarios where we may not have something scheduled on the calendar, but this still lets us hop into a call and discuss something really quickly. Now, there are a few other ways to set up a Meet Now or an impromptu meeting with your colleagues, and they're done in different parts of the Teams application. So, for example, if we go over to our chat within Microsoft Teams, I can see on the right-hand side, I've got buttons to set up an impromptu meeting with my colleague Angus. So if I click on the video icon, it's going to start a video call, meaning that my video is going to be turned on by default with Angus, or I can open audio and my video is just going to be disabled at the beginning. That being said, it's still just a Teams meeting, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. It's trying to call Angus right now, and Angus isn't going to be able to pick up, so we'll go ahead and leave this call. But this just gives us the functionality to be able to do a quick impromptu call with a colleague, and I can, start that call with an individual colleague or even from a group chat if I have a group chat that exists over here in my chat space. You can also use another part of Teams to be able to set up calls. If we go to our Teams, which is our Teams and Channels space, you can see from our channels, we've actually got the call functionality over here in the top right as well. So here in channels, we can do a Meet Now or we can schedule a meeting. One really important thing to note here is that this is going to be involving everyone that has access to this channel. So for instance, if I click Meet Now from my general channel in my content development team, it's going to call or try to call everybody that's a part of that channel. Since that can be hundreds of people sometimes, I really don't recommend using that very often, if at all. You can also schedule meetings within channels. If we were to schedule just a quick meeting and just call it our sync, we don't actually have to add any required attendees, because what this is going to do is it's going to add this channel as a link within the channel's post section. And anyone who has access to this channel will then be able to join this sort of public meeting, as it were, to be able to, engage with this particular part of our team. Channel meetings are a great tool, but they do fit specific scenarios. It's not something that you'll use commonly, but it is something that can be really handy. One really cool thing about a channel meeting is any of the artifacts for that meeting, such as the meeting chat or files shared during that meeting, are also then going to be available through the channel, which makes it easy for everyone who was part of that meeting to be able to access all of it. So maybe for a large team meeting, it could be a useful tool to schedule that meeting within a channel instead of on your calendar. So the last way to go ahead and meet with one of your colleagues that I really enjoy is a quick little shortcut by using the name card. So if I were to hover over Angus's picture here, anywhere that I see Angus's icon within Teams, I'll get Angus's name card that pops up. And from here, I can open my chat or start a chat with my colleague. I can look at the organization chart. And here's the option to start that video or audio call, just like we did from the chat section within Teams. There's even this cool functionality to send a quick message to someone. So I could say, don't forget our lunch together today. Send that off, and it's just going to send that quick message to Angus without breaking my workflow elsewhere within Microsoft Teams. But now let's go ahead and go back to scheduled meetings within Teams. So we're going to move back over to our calendar, and from the calendar, we're going to just click into an open space. Let's say tomorrow at 11 a.m. Or again, I could click new meeting, and that's going to look for the next available meeting spot on my calendar. But I want to choose the specific time for now, so I'm going to click here. And that's going to open up our new meeting creation window. I'm just going to double click on the bar up top to maximize this to the full window. And we're now just really going to go through all of the different features and ways that you can set up a meeting. And that's where we're going to be getting into the next part of our demonstration, which is advanced meeting creation. So you always want to make sure when you're creating a meeting that you do at least have the basic components of your meeting setup. You need a title, so we'll call this the Teams Meetings Overview. And when you're scheduling a meeting on your calendar, you have to at least have one required attendee in order for this to become a Teams meeting. Otherwise, if you don't invite anybody, it will just be a block on your calendar that doesn't have really any interactivity. For example, you can't go into a meeting. That's what I use for blocking out my lunch hour within my calendar, though, for example. But anyway, let's go ahead and invite Angus just to bring my colleague into this. And then you want to make sure you've selected the correct time for your meeting. Now, I clicked into the open space in my calendar, so I know it was available for me. But let's just pop into our scheduling assistant and just double check that this time is going to work for everyone invited to the meeting. We could see my calendar as well as Angus's calendar here, and it looks like we are available. We can confirm that by seeing that it says available next to both of our names over here in Teams. But if I were to move it, like I just moved it, for example, by clicking, it is going to moved it into a space that's unavailable. So let's put it back into the 11 a.m. slot for the 21st, and it shows available for both of us. Here in the scheduling assistant, I could add other attendees by clicking add attendees and then trying to, invite somebody. For instance, I've got one of my external email addresses as a guest. Now, since this person is from outside the organization, their calendar is unknown, and so scheduling assistant might not work as well for those external participants. But other users within your organization, it can be really handy to find a slot that's going to work. You can drag this little window to make it larger or smaller to make your meeting, a longer meeting or a shorter meeting. Let's go ahead and make that 30 and put it back at 11. We're going to just go ahead and remove the guest that I added in there. You could also add someone as an optional attendee. So if I were to add that external user as an optional attendee, we could still see their calendar, but they're not necessarily crucial to this meeting, so we don't have to worry about it as much. You can also add locations for a meeting. So if this is going to be a meeting that, for example, might also be in person, so you've got, a conference room that you want people to be able to join from if they're in the office, and then you still want people to be able to join online from Teams. You can add a location for sorry about that, you can add a location for that Teams meeting. So let's go ahead and, we've got our time that works. We could adjust it up here if we wanted to, but let's go ahead and move back to our details and continue going through the information for this meeting. So we've got the ability to decide if this meeting is going to be a repeat meeting by clicking the drop down here. We could set it to every weekday. We could set it as a daily meeting, a weekly meeting, monthly, yearly, or a custom reoccurrence. If I choose weekly, for example, we could then go in and decide which days of the week it's going to occur. Let's say Tuesday and Thursday. And we could say it's going to repeat every week or maybe every 2 weeks. And you could even select an end date for this. Let's say we want to end it at the end of January. Then we could go ahead and set this reoccurrence. And this meeting will now automatically reoccur every Tuesday and Thursday starting on the 21st and ending there at the end of January. Adding a channel is how you can create a channel meeting from the calendar space here. So we saw how to create a channel meeting directly from that channel. This just also gives us the ability to set up this meeting as a channel meeting versus a meeting that's just hosted on the calendar. Just to pause really quickly and really clarify the difference between a standard Teams meeting and a channel meeting. Like I showed in the demo a little while ago, channel meetings are going to be hosted within that channel. You don't have to actually invite any users, but any user that has access to the channel will be able to access that meeting and all of the resources of that meeting, meaning the chat, files that are shared, the recording if it's recorded, and that will all be accessed from the channel. When you have a scheduled meeting that's scheduled on your calendar, it's hosted by you on your calendar. And so people have to be invited to that meeting or they have to be pulled in manually in order to have access to the meeting, its chat, the files, and things like that. And all of those files are stored in SharePoint Online and not something you really have to worry about. But point is, the main difference there between the channel meetings and the calendar meetings is how it's hosted and how people can access it. So let's go ahead and go back in and continue setting up this meeting. So we're going to go ahead and skip our channel, and we're just going to leave this as a standard online Teams meeting. We're going to remove the location, but we could, if we wanted to add a location, if we have conference rooms set up in Exchange Online, we could search for those here to add a conference room. But my little training organization with Angus and myself is a fully remote organization, so we don't have to worry about our conference rooms. Here in the details, this is where you can type out information, an overview of what's going to happen in this meeting. So we could just say, we'll review Teams meetings functions today. We could add a bullet list and, add in the different stuff we're going to go through, function 1, function 2. You can customize this text just like you can elsewhere in Teams by bolding, italicizing, changing the size from small, medium, or large. It's already set to medium, but we can set that to large. And you can also add in things like links, or you can add in tables, all within this little space. And that's going to send essentially in the body of this invite. So once this meeting invite is sent out, it's going to send an email to everyone that was invited, and they're going to get that sort of body of information in the body of the email. It will also be available within the meeting invite in their Teams calendar. Down here at the bottom, this is one of the features that may not be available for everyone watching this video. It is something that depends on the tenant type that you have. For instance, the last time I worked with government customers, this wasn't available because it uses a Microsoft component called Loop. But here we have the ability to add an agenda, and this is where we could add things like topics. We could add meeting notes as the meeting is going on, and we could even assign tasks for this meeting. Now, the meeting, this agenda is going to be available for us in the meeting notes space whenever we go into our meeting. So let's say for our agenda, we're going to talk about meeting controls. We'll leave meeting notes, but for adding a task, I'll just say deliver training, and that's going to be assigned to me. So I'm going to go ahead and just assign this to myself. And the due date is going to be today because we're recording this today. So that's just sort of how you can fill this out. And we will go ahead and try to take a look at this during our meeting notes once we are in the meeting. We can even see it's telling us you're viewing the meeting notes for this series. So we've gone through everything here in the main meeting creation space. There are a few things up here at the top that we want to make sure we talk about as well. So here under Show As, this little drop down is going to let us dictate how this meeting is going to present on the calendar. By default, it's set to busy, which means when the time hits for this meeting, it's going to show me as busy within Microsoft Teams. If you watched our introduction to Microsoft Teams, you'll remember we talked a little bit about statuses, and the status of busy means that we're not currently available to collaborate. But if you're creating a meeting, let's say I'm going to be delivering a training to a customer off-site, I may select working elsewhere. That way, when people look at this event on my calendar, they'll be able to identify that I am working elsewhere. You could even set out of office calendar blocks here using out of office. You could set it as free, meaning that, maybe you've got something scheduled, but it's something that you don't really have to work in, so you're available, or tentative as well, which is what happens if someone invites you to a meeting and you haven't accepted it yet. You can also make the meeting status private, and so this is just going to set the meeting to private, so people won't be able to see what this meeting is. If they're trying to add you to a meeting and they look at Scheduling Assistant, all they'll see is that there's a block that you're not available. So I'm just going to uncheck private. Category is just how you can color code your calendar. I like to do this just based on the meeting type of whether it's just internal work where I'm just doing some work by myself like editing or recording. I'll do green if it's meeting with colleagues or red if it's meeting with customers, for example. So you can just kind of color coordinate your calendar using these categories, which is something you can also customize out in the calendar space. You don't just have to do it here. We've got time zones, so if you want to set the time of a meeting using a different time zone other than the one that you're currently in, you can do that here. That's really uncommon, not something that I really do very much. I usually just recommend looking up the time zone that you're trying to schedule a meeting with, for example, just to kind of understand the time difference. Response options. So this is where we can decide if we want people to respond to this meeting invite. If we don't want people to respond and we're just sending this meeting out and maybe it's a mandatory meeting where we don't need them emailing us that they're going to attend, we can turn off request responses, and we can also request off the ability to allow forwarding, meaning that people can't forward this invite to other users. So just a little bit of controls there. And then we've got require registration. This is where you can create a registration form where people can then go in and sign up to attend this meeting. Requiring registration is actually part of your webinar functionality within Microsoft Teams meetings. And so adding registration here to a standard Teams meeting effectively turns it into a webinar. We're not going to touch that today because we're not going into webinars, but this is functionality we'll go through when we talk about webinars in the future. Now over here on the right-hand side of our meeting creation window, we're going to start looking at the meeting options. And the meeting options is really just how you can get granular and customize how you want people to be able to join the meeting, who has what permissions during that meeting, and so on. So let's go ahead and run through this really quickly. The default that shows right here is just going to be a simple who can bypass the lobby for the meeting, and do we want to start our recording automatically. So the lobby settings give us a couple of different options, and like it says, this is really just going to determine who is held in a lobby until they are admitted, or who can just jump straight into the meeting without getting held in a lobby. And lobby, for those people that don't know, is just kind of like a digital waiting room before you're admitted into a meeting. Really common if you're joining meetings with other organizations. So if you just want to open this meeting wide open and just say anyone can join without being held in the lobby, you can change this to everyone. This is fine if you are just meeting with people in your organization or people outside of your organization that you really trust. I've had customers that I worked with, and we would meet, a couple times a week, and so we'd set this to everyone, and that way we could always just join without having to worry about lobbies. But you can also set this to things like people in my organization, trusted organizations, and guests. people in my organization and guests, people in my organization, people who were invited to the meeting, or only organizers and co-organizers. So to get to some of the details here, people in my organization is pretty self-explanatory. People that work with me in my company. Trusted organizations is going to be organizations that have been set up with business-to-business collaboration on the back end by your IT administrators. So this is not something that you set up as just an individual user. And then guests is going to be people who have a guest account within your organization. So for example, that external email address user that I added, you can see it says guest next to the name. That means that that user is a guest and would be able to bypass the lobby without getting held in it. The default is people in my organization and guests, so just people that work in my organization and people that are usually contracted is what the guests are. Just people in my organization, people who were invited to the meeting, so they have to be invited in order to bypass the lobby. Only organizers and co-organizers. In the meeting options, as we get into these in a second, you will see that there's the ability to add a co-organizer to your meeting. So by default, since I'm the one creating this meeting, I'm the organizer, and I have full control over this meeting and all of its options and all of the setup. I can add co-organizers to sort of hand that torch over to somebody else so they can control that stuff for the meeting. And then, everyone, again, anyone who gets this meeting link can then join. Now, I did just say a second ago that using the everyone can join without entering the lobby functionality is fine if you're collaborating with people that you collaborate with all the time. But you do still want to be cautious with this because it does mean anyone that gets access to that Teams meeting invite link can join without being held in the lobby. Now, for example, if I'm hosting a meeting where I'm going to meet with some customers and I'm going to be presenting them with a solution that, they potentially are going to be buying, I probably want to have some sort of a lobby set up so that if I'm meeting with my colleagues and we're discussing some of the back-end details that we don't want a customer to hear, we know that if they join maybe early, they're going to get held in the lobby. We'll get a notification that says John Deere or John Doe has tried to join the meeting, and we can admit them and stop talking about the back-end stuff, or we can hold them in the lobby for a second, finish up, and then admit them. So lobbies can be a really handy tool to be able to just sort of filter who can join the meeting without restriction when you're first getting things set up. So let's go ahead and hop back into our meeting options and just go a little bit further into what's available there to help set up restrictions for our meeting to be able to have more control over what's happening in the meeting. Okay, so let's look further at the rest of our meeting options for setting up this meeting. We can click on more options right here, and that's going to open up our meeting options window. And this is going to be the full list of meeting options that we can create. Now, the disclaimer that I've mentioned a couple times, saying that features that you see in this video may not be available for you in your version of Microsoft Teams, is really relevant to this part of the meeting. There are several things in the meeting options that are available in commercial tenants, for example, that still may not be available in GCC, government or DoD tenants. So make sure that if you're not seeing a feature here, you're checking with IT just to see if it's available in government or if it's available in your version of Teams, and then seeing if it's something that is going to be made available by them if it is something that can be used. So let's go ahead and go through these options. We already talked about the lobby. The next thing here is people dialing in can bypass the lobby. This is talking about people who are using the dial-in phone option for your meeting. So if you look down at the meeting invite, once the meeting is created, there'll be a phone number that people can use to dial in to the Microsoft Teams meeting, using their phone, for example. So if we want those people to not be held up in a lobby and just to call in right away, we can flip this, and that way they don't have to worry about being held in a lobby. Announce when people who are dialing in join or leave. This is going to have just a little chime anytime someone who's calling in with their phone enters or exits the meeting. I keep this turned off just to kind of limit the number of distractions that are happening during a meeting, and it's not super important to have it turned on anyway. Choosing co-organizers. So this is where I can determine if one of my colleagues is going to be another organizer for this meeting, and this is going to give them controls such as being able to modify these meeting options and being able to sort of customize the meeting further. So I could type in the name of my colleague Angus, for example, and that's going to add Angus in as a co-organizer and give Angus functionality such as the meeting options. Someone who is a co-organizer can also be added as a breakout room administrator, which is something that I'll be getting to in a future video about breakout rooms. But just to let you know, they can be a co-organizer and a breakout room administrator. I'm going to go ahead and remove him from this list just for the moment because I want to look at the who can present option within meeting options. So here we can determine who within the meeting has the ability to share their screen and present content. So by default, it's going to be set to everyone, but we can restrict this. And if you're meeting with external participants or a lot of people from the public, for example, I definitely recommend restricting this because this can prevent the things that we've seen online about meeting bombing where someone comes in and puts something inappropriate on the screen. This is one of the key ways that you can block that. So one of the things that you can do is you can say people in my organization and people who have guest accounts in my organization can share their screen, or you can say only organizers and co-organizers, so only myself and then whatever co-organizer I set. Or you can even just say specific people. Typically, I actually just prefer to do specific people. That way I know exactly who has the ability to share their screen in my meeting, especially if it's a high stakes meeting, with customers or with external people that we really want to control the content of this meeting. So I'll choose specific people and then I'll say who those specific people are. As the organizer, I'm always going to be included in this list. I don't have to list my name here. So we'll say myself and Angus now. And what this will do is it will set myself and Angus as presenters in the meeting. Anyone else who joins the meeting will automatically be designated as an attendee. And then as presenters and organizers, we have further controls to be able to limit what those attendees can do in the meeting. So for example, I can disable attendee microphones, I can disable attendee cameras, and this is going to mean that the people that join the meeting that aren't presenters or organizers, their microphones and their cameras won't be able to turn them on. So they'll basically just be passive participants in the meeting. This can always be updated throughout the meeting. So for example, if we want to start the meeting, like it's a big demonstration or I used to do these trainings, I'd disable microphones and cameras for attendees for the beginning and while I'm going through content. And then as we took breaks in the training content for Q&A, we would enable microphones and cameras, or we would even enable it for individuals at a time. We'll kind of talk about that as we get into the meeting. But anyway, we have that control if we have presenters enabled to be able to kind of manage this stuff. So we've also got the ability to turn on that automatic recording. Is this meeting automatically going to start recording once it starts? Do we want to have meeting chat on? We want to have no meeting chat? Or do we want to make it so people have to be in the meeting in order to interact with the meeting chat? Do we want to have a Q&A? This is a different type of attendee interaction. So if instead of a meeting chat, you want to turn this off and you want to have a more moderated version of a Q&A, you could turn on the Q&A functionality. That's something that I'll kind of talk about in the future when we're talking about webinars and things like that. Allowing reactions is just allowing people to do thumbs up and stuff like that. Usually good to keep that sort of thing. The green room is going to be something that essentially lets your presenters into a secondary meeting where they can prepare for the session. Not something super common. We'll talk about it later in a future video. And then being the ability to add language interpretation so people can have translators, for example. So we could have like a Spanish interpreter. That's something that I'll talk about in an accessibility training in the future. And then allowing the ability to have an attendance report, allowing the new functionality in Microsoft Teams called Copilot, which is going to use AI to give us sort of a summary of our meeting. So let's just go ahead and leave that. So this is all the meeting options. The main ones that you'll want to use usually is going to be your lobby settings, your organizer and presenter settings, and your attendee settings. The rest of these are a little bit less frequent or a little bit more specific per use case scenario. So if you made changes here, make sure to click your save button. And now that we've got our meeting options done and we've gone through all of the other setup options for our meeting, we're now ready to send this invite off, which we'll click send to do so. And now we will move into the next part of our training, which is going to be actually going into our meeting and doing a meetings control overview, where we're going to talk about all of the different controls within our meeting. But before we do a meetings control overview, the first thing that we're going to just touch on really quickly is the few different ways that you can join a Teams meeting. So we'll go into our ways to join a meeting section next. So we have a few ways to join a meeting from our calendar. The basic way to join a meeting is if we see a meeting that's occurring in the current time that we have. So for example, this orange bar is showing that it's around about 2 o'clock today on Monday. And I've got one meeting that's taking place from 1 to 3 o'clock. And I've got another meeting that took place from 1:30 to 2, but that meeting has sort of just recently ended. I could click the join button here, and that's going to take me to join the meeting, where I can just then click join now and hop into that meeting really quickly. So that's the sort of contextual join button that's available whenever a meeting is occurring at the current time. We've also got the ability to just single click on a meeting, so I'm just going to click on this Teams meetings overview. That's going to open a small pop-up window, and from here I could click join. Same thing, it's going to open that join meeting window, and we could click join now here to join that meeting. We could also click on the link right here, and this link is going to do the same thing. It's going to open that meeting for us, but we could also copy this link by clicking the copy button right here and send that to somebody if there's someone last minute we need to add to the meeting. So the single click opens that little pop-up box, or I can double click on the meeting, and that's going to open up our full meeting details. As the organizer, I'm seeing all this stuff that I can edit, but if I was just an attendee, I'm just going to see like the name and the time and date and the information here, which also includes a link to join the meeting. This is going to be something that's found in the email. Whenever someone gets an invite, they'll go into their email and they'll be able to find this link that they could then click to join the Teams meeting. There's even a meeting ID and passcode, which you can use to then go into your calendar, go to join with an ID, enter that meeting ID and passcode, and join that way as well. So there's quite a few ways that you can join a meeting, and which one you use is really up to you. It depends on how you like to join meetings, but functionally they are really all the same. So now we're going to go ahead and move into the next part of our session, where we'll actually go into the session and we will do our meeting controls overview. So here in this part of the video, we're going to be getting into a lot of different features that happen or that exist within a Microsoft Teams meeting. There's a lot of stuff here, so feel free to pause, write things down, go back and watch things again, or rewatch the video in the future if you need to. All the functionality that we're going to go through in the meeting is, sort of general functionality. There are a few pieces that we're going to get to in the future, in future videos, and that's going to be breakout rooms as well as accessibility features within Teams meetings. So if you're specifically looking for that content, then make sure you wait and see our future videos on that kind of stuff. But we're going to go ahead and hop in and look at all of our meeting stuff now. All right, so let's go ahead and join our Teams meeting overview. We can see that it's a different color now. It's a darker purple compared to the sort of standard purple. And that means that this meeting is currently underway. And what that will mean for us is that our colleague Angus has already joined. That is then going to bring up our contextual join button since this meeting is underway. So we can click on that to go ahead and just hop into our meeting. And we'll click on join now. This is then going to bring us into the meeting that we have with Angus. I'm going to double click on the bar up top to maximize this window so that our meeting is taking up our entire screen. So over on the right-hand side, we can see the meeting notes. If you remember from our meeting creation, if I minimize this really quickly and move it over, go back to our meeting here, the notes that we had down here for the agenda, that's going to be the information that's showing in the meeting notes for our Teams meeting. So we could go ahead and continue to add stuff here, and this is going to be like a live document, for our meeting or for our whole meeting series. In the case of this meeting, where this is a series of meetings, meaning that all of these meeting notes are going to carry over from session to session. But let's go ahead and close out of that. We are essentially going to go through everything in the meeting controls from left to right. And there's, a few things that we're going to dive into there, as well as things that we'll dive into as we look at the actual meeting stage. We can see Angus right here. Neither of us have our camera on right now, but if we want to change that, I can go ahead and click here to turn on my camera. Before I click, if I just hover over here like I'm currently doing, I can see a private preview of what my video will look like. I could add things like background blur, there's background videos effects, and we'll kind of touch on those a little bit later. But once I'm ready, I could apply and turn on video, or just click on the camera button here. And my video is going to pop up here in the bottom right-hand corner for me. Now, on Angus's device, it's going to be, my video will be taking up a majority of the screen, and Angus's will come over into the bottom right-hand corner. So if Angus turns on his video, we'll see Angus take up the full screen. And you may have noticed that Angus looks a little bit different than his profile picture. He tends to use a lot of filters in his pictures, so we'll let him get away with it for now. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and start going through all of these sort of meeting controls one by one. So the first thing we'll look at here is our chat. And opening the chat is going to just open up the text conversation of this meeting. So really, if someone is presenting something or there's something going on the screen and you don't want to unmute your microphone and interrupt them, or if you're an attendee, for example, and your microphone has been disabled, the meeting chat's where you can make comments or hold a conversation during that meeting. So I could just say, "Hey Angus," and I could tag Angus by typing @ and then Angus's name. And this is just going to send that message in the chat. Now, everyone who's in this meeting can see this chat. The Teams meetings don't have the same functionality that you get in Zoom meetings, where you can specify who you want to see a message from within that session. Now, you can always, make your meeting smaller, move it to another monitor if you want, go back into your main application during the meeting, and then you could open a chat. Let's say if I want to just have a one-on-one chat with Angus while the meeting's going on, I could always pop this chat out into a separate window. And then I could go back into my meeting. I've got my meeting. Maybe I move this chat onto another monitor so I can full screen my meeting. Or I could just leave it like this if I'm okay with these sort of sizes for my meeting. And now I could have a side conversation with one of my colleagues who's in the meeting while I'm also actively in the meeting. So that way we're not if we're maybe wanting to talk about something a little bit more discreet, we're not doing it in the meeting chat. So this is a feature that really highlights some of the multitasking functionality that's available within Microsoft Teams. Here I can have a chat open with one of my colleagues, or a group chat with a couple of my colleagues that I opened from the Teams application behind, and I can still participate in this meeting. When it comes to multitasking with any communication and collaboration software, I cannot stress enough how important it is to have at least one additional monitor. So you've got, 2 monitors total. You could have your meeting up on your first monitor, and then you could have the Teams application and a Word document and an individual chat or an internet browser open on your other monitor, and really be able to kind of, multitask during that meeting. So having that second chat open is pretty handy. But let's go ahead and just move back over to our meeting, full screen this, and we'll continue. So that's opening the chat. We've got the same kind of editing functionality for these messages that we get Elsewhere in Teams, we can, bold, italicize, increase font size, add bulleted lists and things like that into a chat message. That being said, when it comes to creating lists or like tasks for the meeting, that's where the meeting notes is going to be really valuable. So we'll get to that in a second. Now, whenever you open any of these menus for your meeting controls, you'll notice they open up a blade over here on the right-hand side, and you can only have one blade open at a time. So if I go into my people menu, which is the next place we're going to look at, that's going to replace that chat blade. And that's why maybe, using pop-out chats for communicating one-on-one with others is pretty handy. I could also have my meeting over on my right-hand monitor, and then on my left-hand monitor, I could have the meeting chat open. So that way, in my Teams application, so that way I've now got my meeting, and I'm maybe looking at the people menu, or I just don't want to take up that extra space on my screen. And I could have the Teams application open on my other monitor with the meeting chat going on. Now, it's important to note that a meeting chat can't be popped out into a separate window. So you'd have to be using the actual Teams application to be able to access that chat at the same time as your meeting. But let's go ahead and go back in here and look at the next part of our meeting, which is going to be our participants menu. So participants, or if you look up at the bar at the top, it's called people. That shows the number of people that's in the meeting. So we've got 2 people in this meeting right now. And then over here, we've got the list of people that are in this meeting. Anyone else who was invited would show up in this list, and we could even request to join. And that's going to essentially call that person to try and bring them into the meeting. You can also type the name of people who haven't already been invited to try to add those people here. Names of people within the organization, for example, to be able to bring them in. You can also click on Share Invite, and this will give you the ability to quickly grab a link for this meeting that you could then share with someone if maybe they're saying like, oh, my calendar's not working. I don't know why it's not letting me join. Try send them a link, see if that works. Up here at the top of participants, we've got a little drop down here. And we'll have the ability to manage permissions. This opens up those meeting options that we saw when we were creating the meeting, where we can customize the permissions of participants and attendees, for example. There's also a third place where we can access that, and we're going to look at it there a little bit later. So we won't touch it there. Downloading an attendance list, we could download a list of the people that showed up to our meeting to maybe check attendance for required sessions. And you can also lock a meeting so people can no longer join that meeting. So from here, we've got a list of the people that are in this meeting, myself and Angus. Now, both of us were set as presenters when I created this meeting, if you'll remember. And that means that both of us have the same level of permissions in this meeting. So it's just showing that 2 people are in the meeting. But let's say Angus wasn't a presenter, and Angus is actually an attendee for this meeting. So I'm going to click on More Options next to Angus's name, and I have the option to make Angus an attendee. It'll confirm that I want to change Angus's role, and now Angus has been made an attendee. If you remember earlier, I set the settings so that the attendee cameras and microphones were disabled, and so it automatically turned off Angus's camera and disabled Angus's microphone. So Angus can no longer turn on his camera or enable his microphone to say anything. If I want to change that for all attendees, that's where I can go into those manage permissions. We can see we even got a little pop-up that allows us to switch it for all attendees right from this menu. I could allow microphone for all attendees. I could allow camera for all attendees. Or I could go in, let's disable those again. And instead of doing it for all attendees, I could go in and just select Angus, and I could allow Angus's camera or microphone as an individual. So what's handy about that is if we are going to utilize the next function in our meeting controls, the raise your hand function for Q&A, this gives us the ability to then specify who we want to allow to speak or come on camera during a Q&A session. So if I've finished presenting and I say, if you have any questions for our presenters, please raise your hand and we'll call on you one at a time. Angus can then go in and raise his hand. It will show here that Angus raised his hand and that he's first in line was the first person to raise his hand. We can even see it out here. Angus has got his hand raised. It's very clear. Even if we've got camera on, let's allow camera for attendees. So even if we've got camera on and Angus turns his camera back on, we'll still see that we've got our hand raised here, and he's still got that yellow border around his camera showing that Angus has his hand up. So we could then call on Angus and go in and enable Angus's microphone. Angus could then unmute, ask his question, and once he's done asking his question, we could then go in and disable his microphone. We could even disable Angus's camera if we want to. And then if Angus forgets to lower his own hand, we could even lower his hand for him. And so he will, his raise hand, UI will no longer show up. So the controls that we have here are pretty handy when it comes to attendee and control functionality. Again, you can allow or disable cameras for all attendees or just individuals at a time. We've also got the ability to pin or spotlight users, and this is going to make that person's video a priority within the stage, which is what we call this area where all of the meeting windows are taking place. So if we do pin for me, this is going to add a little pin icon next to Angus's name, and that means that Angus is essentially anchored on the screen. So as a meeting gets more full, and we have, more people in the meeting than we can fit on the screen at one time, what it's going to do is it's going to cycle people's video into the priority space depending on how recently they spoke. But if there's someone that I really want to keep an eye on, I can pin them, and they're always going to remain in the stage for me as an individual. Pinning is something that is specific to me, so my pins aren't reflected by anyone else in the meeting. Spotlight, however, is like the pin functionality, but for everyone in the meeting. So if we want to spotlight a presenter, for example, we can spotlight for everyone, and now Angus is always going to be anchored on the screen for everybody in the meeting. Angus is going to get a notification at the top of his meeting window telling him that he's been spotlighted, and he can also turn it off himself at any time. We know someone's spotlighted because of the little icon down here next to their name that shows spotlight. Just like with pin, we can turn it off back here in the people menu by stopping spotlight. And now Angus will just go back to a regular participant in the meeting. You can also pin your own video if you want your own video to be prioritized in the meeting for whatever reason. And then we can see we've got Angus's video off to the side in the remainder of the gallery. And then we can, unpin whenever we want. You can spotlight yourself as well in the same way. So that is essentially everything to go through in the people menu side of things. Now, when it comes to pinning and spotlighting, a lot of people tend to use those or think to use those as the way to pin an ASL interpreter, for example. However, there is a specific feature for pinning ASL interpreters and assigning interpreters for sign language. That's something I'll cover in the accessibility features of Microsoft Teams video, and that'll be in the future. But let's go ahead and move on. We could remove someone from a meeting from this list as well, but we don't want to kick Angus out. Angus is a good colleague. So let's go ahead and keep going through our feature functionality. So we talked about raising our hand. We can click this to raise our hand. We can now see in the bottom right that I've raised my hand. And if Angus were to raise his hand as well, it would then show Angus has raised his hand. He's number 2. I raised my hand. I was the first person to raise my hand. And then we can just click this option again to both lower our hands within this meeting. We've got reactions as well, and this is just a way to non-verbally react to something that's going on in the meeting. We can send a thumbs up, we can send a heart reaction, and if you see my video in the bottom right-hand corner, it's going to show those reactions over my video. So again, if Angus is going to go in and heart react to something, it's going to show up over Angus's video. If someone's sharing their screen, these reactions are just going to sort of pop up along the bottom of the meeting. The next thing we have is our views, and views is one of the ways that you can customize just how you're going to be seeing the content during your Teams meeting. The standard view is the gallery, and that's just going to fill our meeting stage with videos as people join this meeting. The standard gallery goes up to a 3x3, so 9 videos total will show in this gallery at once before it starts adding an additional gallery ribbon where we'll essentially see more videos, and we can also cycle through to find additional videos there. If you want to put specific emphasis on whoever is actively speaking in that meeting, you can click speaker, and that's going to cycle whoever is actively speaking into the main stage, and everybody else is going to go over into the remaining part of the gallery. Now, if you've got somebody pinned or spotlighted, or you have an ASL interpreter who is designated as your sign language interpreter, they will always have priority. So, for example, I'm not the active speaker, but I'm pinned, so I'm going to be having priority here in this stage. So if Angus does start speaking, Angus will also take a priority over everyone else in the meeting, but not more than somebody who is pinned or that is an ASL interpreter. So I'm going to go ahead and unpin myself again to go back to our views. We've also got together mode, and this is just one of those ways that creates a little virtual gallery space to make it look like you and your colleagues are all in the same place. So we could say that Angus and I are here underwater. We'll click apply, and now it shows Angus and myself and the plant over Angus's head here in this together mode space. Now, together mode has a couple of different things that you can do with it. For example, you can uncheck this if you don't want everyone else to also see that together mode. If you leave this checked, which is the default, and you start playing around with all the different views, it's going to be changing those views for everybody in the meeting. So it's really important that if you don't want people to be seeing all the stuff changing while you're changing it, you can turn this off and just set these for yourself. We can click apply. You can also assign the seats and choose who you want to be in each of these places. So we'll assign me there, and we'll put Angus next to me, and then click assign, and it's going to assign those specific seats for us. So this is sort of just one of those virtual togetherness experiences that came out of the pandemic, but it's still pretty cool. So let's go ahead and change back to our standard gallery and just look at the last couple of options for our views. Large gallery is going to give you the ability to see more than 9 people on camera at one time on your screen. It's actually up to 49 people on video. So if no one's sharing their screen and you just want to see everyone on camera, then you have the large gallery. To be honest, once you get above 9 people on camera, those windows really start to get small, and I don't really see the purpose in it, but the functionality is there if you want to see everyone's face on video. You've also got focus on content, and that's just going to reduce the amount of visual noise on the screen. Focus on content that's being shared during the meeting, and remove minimize the gallery. So for example, if I go in and I hide my own video because maybe that's a distraction for me, it's going to minimize it like this. Similar functionality to the view for focusing on content. We've also got more options here under views, and this is going to let us do things like turn off incoming video. That's going to disable video for everyone else in the meeting, just for me. So if my computer is really lagging, I'm really having network issues, I can disable incoming video, and it's just going to turn off their incoming video for me specifically. So other people can still see them on video. It's not affecting the meeting experience for anybody else, but it's just saving me a little bit of that bandwidth by not seeing everyone's video. We can go back in and turn that on at any point in the more options under view. We can also move our gallery from the default right side to the top, and it will bring the gallery up over the top of the meeting as opposed to down the right-hand side. My preference is usually to have it on the right-hand side, so I'm just going to leave it there. Last thing in views is full screen, and that lets you full screen your meeting, or you can do that with your default browser or your default operating system way, whether you use the options on Mac or maximizing on Windows. So now we're going to pop over into the next one, which is our notes. And the notes is going to open that little note section that we saw when we created the meeting and when we first joined the meeting. This popped up for us where we can have our agenda topics that we go through. We can check those off as we complete them in our meeting. We can add additional notes. Angus uses filters. Call him out in the meeting notes. And we can also assign tasks. And these tasks are going to actually assign for these users in the tasks application. So if they open up tasks by Planner and To Do within their Microsoft 365, they'll see these tasks that were assigned during these meetings. Now, again, since this is a series meeting, meaning that I set it as reoccurring, twice a week for a couple months, these meeting notes are going to follow each of those individual meeting occurrences. So it will always be, helping us pick up from the last time. So we can copy these components and paste them into, a new note space, for example, if we wanted to. Even open this in the browser or see who has access to these particular meeting notes from that menu. Rooms is the menu that we can use to set up breakout rooms. As I said before I started going through the meeting stuff, I'm not going to go through breakout rooms today. It's its own training, so that's something we'll be doing in the future. Moving on to apps, this gives you the ability to add additional applications into the Teams meeting. A lot of these are going to be focused around communication or collaboration. For example, we have the Asana application, which we could add directly into our meeting. And this is going to really just help you if you're using third-party applications already within your organization and you start using Teams, being able to bring those applications into Teams just makes it easier to be able to communicate and collaborate and work across your systems in one space. And there may be, applications that you want to use for, instead of using the Notes tab within a Teams meeting, there's a specific application that you use for Notes that has a Teams meeting extension. You can go ahead and add that application in and use that as a Teams meeting app. So this allows you to fully just more customize the platform of the meeting itself. We'll go into more in just a second. The first thing I want to do is just click on our microphone settings so we can turn our microphone on or turn our microphone off just by clicking there. We can also click on share, and this is how we're going to be able to share our screen. So we've got a few different ways in which we can share content within one of these meetings. So we can share our entire screen, and you can choose if you've got multiple displays, you can choose which display you want to share. You can also choose a window, and that's going to let you select a specific application window that you have open. So instead of showing your full desktop, it's just going to show that application. You can even open up a whiteboard, and this is going to open up a collaborative whiteboard in your meeting for everyone to be able to mark up together. Whiteboard, honestly, can also be its own separate training, so it probably will be down the line. If you've got any PowerPoint files uploaded into your Teams, you could open those in PowerPoint Live, or you could open up other files from your OneDrive or your computer and share those directly from this menu. If you're going to be sharing anything like a video on your screen, make sure that you choose to include computer sound. That way you can make sure that the audio coming from that video is going to come through into the meeting as well. There's some different presenter modes as well that you can select from, and this is going to allow you to just customize how people are going to see the content. So for example, if I want to share a window and I'm going to share my Teams application window, it'll basically show for people like this. But if I were to go in, stop sharing, and then change to, let's say, what they call it standout, I call it the weatherman mode, and then we click on our window and select to share again, this is essentially the view that people are going to see. It's smaller for me just because this is just like a little previewer that I can use to see what my participants are seeing, but I can increase my size or decrease my size here on this window. I could move from left to right hand side. And so this is the view that my participants are seeing while I'm sharing my screen. At any point, I can go in and stop sharing from my little context menu that popped up once I started sharing. I can also turn my camera on and off, disable or enable my microphone from here, or I can full size to go back into the full meeting view. So let's go ahead and stop sharing, And we'll move in now to our kind of last section of our meeting controls, which is our more options. So clicking on more options here, there's a few sort of sub menus to go through within options. So let's go ahead and just go from top to bottom, record and transcribe. That's going to allow us the ability to start a recording for our meeting. And once the meeting recording has been selected, we'll see up in the top left, there's a little red record button, and we get a notification for everyone in the meeting that recording has started. If someone doesn't want to be recorded, then they can choose to leave that meeting at the point if they need to. Once you want to stop the recording, you can go in and stop recording. If you have transcription enabled in your organization, transcription will automatically turn on when you start recording and automatically turn off when you stop recording. Transcription is something that can be managed by your organization. I didn't enable it in my tenant, but I can do that in the future. And this essentially just listens to everything that's being said in the meeting and creates a transcript that can be used in the future for creating caption files or just to reference later as a transcript. So we'll stop recording now, stop the recording, and that recording is then going to be saved and accessible from the chat of this meeting, which we'll kind of circle back on in a little bit. We've got our meeting info, and that's just going to show an overview of our meeting title, the date and time, the occurrence, copying join info to be able to invite people or bring people into this meeting, the body of that meeting invite, as well as the links, the meeting ID, and the passcode. So this is just like a quick reference section to be able to help people get into the meeting or help people find any of that information from the meeting invite. We've got effects and avatars, and this is a menu that lets you choose the background effects that you want to use while you're on video. So let's say I want to, select one of these background videos and maybe add a little animation over it. I would have to add our custom filters in here. But once I click apply, we can see that's applied to my video. I can always go in and preview as well. And that's going to, I don't have filters added in yet, but we can go in and as I'm clicking on the new ones, it's showing a little preview here of what my video is going to look like before I apply it and turn on my video. So once I apply and turn on video, it will then make that my active, video. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my background. Okay. So now we have a couple more options here. We've got our language and speech, which lets you turn on live captions, confirm what language people are speaking in the meeting. And then if I unmute my microphone, we'll see the caption window appear at the bottom of the screen, and it's going to start automatically transcribing what I'm saying as I'm saying it. It's pretty accurate as long as you're speaking clear. In my experience, it can tend to have issues with thick accents and things like that, or technical terms. But the more you use these functions, the more they get better. So I always have captions on in my meetings just to be able to kind of view them. And I'll go into more detail on caption settings and things like that in the accessibility features video that I'll be doing in the future. So I'm going to go in and just turn off those captions. Speaker Coach is another feature that I'll go through in its own video. This is a feature that essentially watches as you present within a meeting and then is able to provide feedback on your cadence, any filler words you use frequently like or and things like that. So it can be a really helpful tool for improving your presentation skills. In settings, we've got a few different settings available for us. So we've got our device settings, which lets us choose which speakers, microphone, camera that we're using, and we can adjust other features such as spatial audio, adjusting the brightness or soft focus on our camera. So this is where you can go in, and if you're maybe having audio issues in a meeting, people are saying, sorry, Angus, I can't hear you. Angus can pop in here and make sure the right microphone is selected and then it's not muted. We can also go in here and make sure that we've got the right speakers. So if we're not hearing people, we can just adjust our device settings from here within the meeting. In settings, we've also got our call health, which is going to let us just see the health of the call, like a round trip time for our network, our audio bitrate, video bitrate, screen sharing bitrate. This is all kind of some of the more technical stuff, but if you're one of those people that is worried about your resolution or your bitrate or just, what's happening in your meeting. Is it a high enough quality? You can check in here for that info. And then we've got our meeting options. So just like we did before our meeting started, where we adjusted meeting options, this is where we can go in and adjust our lobby settings, our presenters, our attendee options, enabling language interpretation or cart captions, which will come in our accessibility training as well. You can adjust all of this in real time. So it's not something where you have to set it up before the meeting, and then if you forget to set something up, you're out of luck. Here you can go in and adjust this throughout the life cycle of the meeting, as the meeting evolves. Once the meeting training ends and you want to open up for Q&A, you could enable everyone's microphone and attendees and just have a free-for-all if you want. So meeting options is accessed from our more options under settings and go into meeting options. Accessibility is a menu where we can adjust things like turning on sign language view or always turning on captions. I will be looking at that in more detail in the accessibility features training in the future. Last but not least here, we have the ability to not show chat bubbles. So if we don't have our chat window open, bubbles for when people send messages will appear up at the top of our meeting. So I don't have the chat open right now. Let's go ahead and have Angus send a quick message. Angus is going to say something. Well, Angus's chat isn't loading, so cut that little window out. Okay. So Angus is going to send a quick message for us, and we'll see that since I don't have the chat open, that should appear as a bubble for us up here in the top of the meeting. Angus's meeting crashed. Okay. Cut all that out. So we have the ability to disable our chat bubbles. Whenever someone sends a message in the meeting, if I don't have chat open, it'll appear as a bubble here in the top of the screen. We can disable that. We can also disable notifications for this meeting if we wish, which is all personal preference. So we've now gone through all of the controls for the meeting. The last thing to do in this meeting, once it's over, is to leave, which you can do by clicking the leave button right here. You can also click on the drop down if you're the organizer and choose to end the meeting, and that will end the meeting for everybody. So there won't be anyone sitting in the meeting that maybe went, away from the meeting while it was going on. So if I click end meeting and click end, that's now ended the meeting for everybody. Which brings us to the chat space within our Teams application. And from here, we can see our Teams meeting chat that we were just a part of. And in the chat space, we've got a link to the recording that we started in there that everyone who has access to the meeting could then access from here. There's also a recording and transcription tab. Any files that were shared are going to be here in the files tab, as well as the file for our recording, which is saved in the OneDrive for Business account of the host of that meeting. All right, so we've talked about a lot of stuff today, and now it's just time for us to wrap up, and we will talk about what's coming up in future videos and also how you can support the channel. All right, so in today's video, we covered a few different things in Microsoft Teams meetings, and we really took a deep dive into the Microsoft Teams meetings platform. So the topics that we covered today were types of meetings in Microsoft Teams, advanced meeting creation. We talked about different ways to join a meeting controls overview, where we really jumped into all of the controls within a Teams meeting. And then we wrapped up, which we're doing right now as a wrap up. So just want to say thanks again for watching another one of TechTrain's videos. And we're focusing a lot on Microsoft Teams and Microsoft 365 now, but we will be branching into a lot of other content in other platforms as the channel grows. TechTrain is still really young, and we're still trying to grow our sphere of influence. And the main way that you can help us do that is by subscribing to the TechTrain YouTube channel. So make sure that you subscribe. If you liked this training or it was helpful, make sure to like the video. You can also set up alerts so that way you're notified whenever we post a new video. And make sure that if you want to follow along with updates on LinkedIn, you follow us on LinkedIn as well, which you can find the link to on the screen here. So in our next training video, we'll continue to go through Microsoft Teams, and we're following the theme of diving deeper into a couple smaller topics. So in the next video, or in the next couple videos, we'll be going into all of the settings within Microsoft Teams, managing your activity, and more details within Microsoft Teams chats. We'll also go into teams and channels in the future, and things like how to really manage teams and channels, or be an owner of a teams and channels space. And then from there, we'll be able to either move into extending in Microsoft Teams, or even start branching out into other applications, whether it's Zoom or whether it's some of the other Microsoft 365 applications. And an important way that you can help us with the direction of where these videos go is just to comment under this video or under any of our videos, and just let me know what stuff you want to see in the future. I'm always happy to create content that people need, and so please let me know what you're looking for, and I'd be more than happy to help. But anyway, once again, thank you for watching this video, and thank you for supporting TechTrain, and we'll see you in the next video. Take care.